The Act of Uniformity 1662 is an act of the Parliament of England. It prescribed the form of public prayers, administration of sacraments, and other rites of the established Church of England, according to the rites and ceremonies prescribed in the Book of Common Prayer. Adherence to this was required in order to hold any office in government of the Church. Although the 1662 edition of the Book of Common Prayer prescribed by the Act was so new that most people had never even seen a copy, it also explicitly required episcopal ordination for all ministers, i.e., deacons, priests and bishops, which had to be reintroduced since the Puritans had abolished many features of the Church during the Civil War. A few sections of this Act were still in force in the United Kingdom at the end of 2010. Great Ejection. As an immediate result of this Act, over 2,000 clergymen refused to take the oath and were expelled from the Church of England in what became known as the Great Ejection of 1662, although there had already been ministers outside the established Church. This created the concept of non-conformity, with a substantial section of English society excluded from public affairs for a century and a half. Clarendon Code. The Act of Uniformity itself is one of 4 crucial pieces of legislation known as the Clarendon Code, named after Edward Hyde, Earl of Clarendon, Charles II's Lord Chancellor. They are: the Corporation Act. This first of the 4 statutes which made up the Clarendon Code required all municipal officials to take Anglican communion, and formally reject the Solemn League and Covenant of 1643. The effect of this act was to exclude nonconformists from public office. This legislation was rescinded in 1828. The Act of Uniformity 1662. This second statute made use of the Book of Common Prayer compulsory in religious service. Upwards of 2,000 clergy refused to comply with this act, and were forced to resign their livings. The Conventicle Act. This act forbade conventicles of more than 5 people who were not members of the same household. The purpose was to prevent dissenting religious groups from meeting. The 5 Mile Act. This final act of the Clarendon Code was aimed at nonconformist ministers, who were forbidden from coming within 5 miles of incorporated towns of the place of their former livings. They were also forbidden to teach in schools. This act was not rescinded until 1812. Combined with the Test Act, the Corporation Acts excluded all nonconformists from holding civil or military office, and prevented them from being awarded degrees by the universities of Cambridge and Oxford. Another act, the Quaker Act, required subjects to swear an oath of allegiance to the king, which Quakers did not do out of religious conviction. The Book of Common Prayer introduced by Charles II was substantially the same as Elizabeth's version of 1559, itself based on Cranmer's earlier versions of 1549 and 1552. Apart from minor changes, this remains the official and permanent legal version of prayer authorized by Parliament and Church. Act of Toleration. The Toleration Act 1688 allowed certain dissenters places and freedom to worship, provided they accept or subscribe to an oath. Modified in 1872, the provisions of the Act of Uniformity 1662 were modified and partly revoked by the Act of Uniformity Amendment Act 1872.